everyone, Joe here from ActionX. Welcome to What's on the Tube. It's our show here where we review things in the world of television. Normally we do episode-by-episode reviews of on-air shows. Sometimes we do these seasonal reviews where sometimes a show comes out. It's really, really great. It's really, really impactful to me as a viewer, and I want to do a deep dive review. And for today, we are doing One Piece, specifically the Netflix live-action adaptation of its season 2, which at the time of this, it's been out for a month, so I'm really late to the game, but you know what? Things come well for the people that wait. But yeah, so just a warning, this is a spoiler-filled review, so if you have not yet seen the second season of One Piece on Netflix, then you really should. It's a really great, amazing season of television. I think to get into the nuances there in the second is something that, you know, if you were hesitant on the story, on the lineage, again, obviously it comes from a manga in Japan, which is also more popularly associated with its anime counterpart as well, that is, you know, transcended the world. It is definitely a show that even if you are not that type of fan, this is a really good middle ground entry point for you, as a, you know, live action television show, a drama, as well as a comedy. And this is by far a really, really fascinating and entertaining show that you will not lose your time in as a result of it. And and this is the short spiel of it. For me, I've reviewed One Piece in the Netflix form in the past, back in 2023, so it's been a while. We're in 2026. I'm older, my hair is gotten, all over the place, and at the end of the day, I have waited patiently for this season. I have waited patiently. Fun fact, me and my partner, this was our first show that we binged together, and we waited all this time for season 2. It has taken a very, very long time, and I blame Netflix for being so slow. But there's also the strike, so I'm like, there was a bit of a delay there, but there was a bit of a miscommunication on that front. But essentially, it has taken us a long while to get to this point. I have been told time and time again, read the manga, watch the anime. I'm like, this is the variation for me. Like, this is one of those things where, like, I think we're at that point where, like, One Piece is definitely a very rare story. Because, I live in America. I'm used to American ideals. There is a classic character, a classic story, a classic world, and we, as time goes on, as centuries go on, we get multiple interpretations of that same story, or maybe different variations of it, different nuances depending on the medium, depending on the time period. And the fact that One Piece has entered this realm where, like, in the matter of like a short 5-10 years, we have, obviously the manga that is still going, we have the anime which is still going, now we have this Netflix adaptation, and we are getting also an anime remake already that is still going to be running concurrently whenever that does come out, is impressive to say the least. That, this story is now being told 3 times in 3 different mediums, and is still able, like, you can choose what you want, and they all have something magical to it. It's still the same core story. So from a story perspective, it's amazing. It really, really is. And, and it's so simplistic. It's not really anything, that is too complex, I'll get more about it into when we get to the deep dive spoiler section, but, it was so accessible to me as the audience, which, again, I had so much hesitation in the 2020s, that this was the time period where, like, I really connected more with anime than more than ever. When the pandemic hit, like, the anime essentially really became the crux of my binging habits. It was really when I was starting to, like, get into more than I'm used to, because I grew up on Dragon Ball Z to an extent, but in reality, besides that, I really couldn't tell you what else besides that and Pokemon. But other than that, people don't relate. Dragon Ball Z is like, oh my god, super popular, and Pokemon's just like for kids. So it's like that. Those are the only real 2 I relate to. So to be able to branch out of it, obviously I love My Hero Academia. That's one of my favorite animes of all time. But I have watched tons of others since then. And One Piece was always one that I was very, very hesitant to get into. It's just so long. It's just so meaty. Where do you even get started? And, when this concept was presented, back in 2023 by just, the general, like, my audience, some of my friends did watch a couple episodes, and obviously my partner, who, is a big big proprietor and big fan of the One Piece fandom. And, just all that alone got me into this to the point like, I am literally counting the days when we can get season two. I waited for all 2024, all of 2025 to get to this point. It is, I think it's also, it's just another thing about television nowadays, but that's a conversation for another time. But just to get back into it, One Piece season two, before we get into deep spoilers, is by far a near to perfect continuation of an already amazing first season. I rewatched that first season 3 times, and I was very much like, even if I had just watched it recently at the end of 2025 to get ready for the season, I still watch it again to get properly ready to lead into season two. And it was the best decision, and that made all the impact for the season being more like, it avoids the sophomore slump to an extent. It continues everything that the first season did, and even the little minor maybe criticisms that people might have were immediately rectified. And now it just comes to the show of like, how long can we get this for? And like, by the time we wrap season two, I wanted season three on my queue right then and there. So that says all I need to say about it. But again, we're entering spoilers right now, so if you have not yet watched One Piece season two, that and season one are available on Netflix for your viewing pleasure. So with that being said, let's get down into it at long last. So, like I said, with the story at the top of it, the story is very simplistic. Again, there was a pirate named Goldie Roger. He was the king of the pirates at the time point. He found the most legendary of legendary treasures at the time, called the One Piece. We still don't know to this day exactly what is the One Piece, but again, let's just roll with it. It's treasure. And he marked the challenge of like, whoever does find the One Piece will be the new king of the pirates. Until then, no one is king of the pirates. And we had all the lore building of like, of Luffy, his past exploits with another pirate crew, with Shanks and his crew, and then him meeting is essentially would be his first variation of his crew in the Straw Hat Pirates, with Zoro, Nami, Sanji, and Usopp. Like going for it, like, and the fact that like again they managed to like take, I want to say almost, from what I heard, almost 100 chapters of the original source material and make it into 8 really well done, digestible episodes that still felt like a season of television. And again, whether or not the author really knew exactly how this would be converted way down the road, or just, again, the talented showrunner led by Matt Owens, who managed to, like, again, take the original, not the anime, the manga, and managed to actually craft a real season of television out of it, like a start to finish 8-episode run of it. And they did wonderfully. They did that perfectly. So like, obviously you go into season two where like, again, this season has the subtitle Into the Grand Line, where like the whole thing that they were just alluding to in the first season is finally here. We're finally going to the Grand Line. We're finally going to get into some of the more like, I guess like in a way like the real story of One Piece, where like, we have the crew going to different islands, meeting different people, eventually slowly building out their crew into the quest of finding the One Piece. And again, I was very concerned because, like, maybe I swallowed myself, but like, I know a little bit ahead. I know what characters are going to come up. I know the villains. I know how this overall thing is going to go. And then I'm just very confused because season two is going to be, I was concerned. I thought it was going to be in between, where like, it's bridging the gap from season one and it's getting you for season three, which has already been confirmed, which I'm like, thank God. But other than that, like, that was my concern going into this. Like, like, would this feel like a completed story, or would this feel like part of a story? And I feel like, to answer it, it's a little bit of both. Like, I do believe it requires season three to finish this story, but it tells its own self-contained story of season two, in generalness of like having the crew really have to understand what it means to go on the journey. Going into the Grand Line, it's only just the beginning for all of them. Obviously not to say season one was nothing. I feel like that was the prelude for what's to come. And now here, this is where they really have to kind of like honor the promises they made at the end of season one. End of season one, with the barrel scene, having all of them like shout out their dreams, promise to each other that like, no matter what happens, we are a crew now. We are heading off into a very unknown land that none of us know what to do. And this season, I mean, for the lack of better way of saying it, they do definitely feel underprepared. It's like in a video game where like you might be level 15 and you think, oh my god, I'm such a badass in the starter area, and then you move on to like some of the main areas. It's like you're getting your ass kicked, and I'm like, of course, yeah, like you have only it's I think the analogy of like is like when you leave home for the first time, like your hometown, the people, the locals, you kind of have a feeling like I know this area from the back of my hand, and going into a whole new world, a whole new, environment, a whole new city, a whole new state, a whole new country. It's a scary thought where like, yeah, you're going to get your ass whooped a couple times. You're going to be busted on there a lot of times than not. And that's kind of what the lineage is here, where like, as soon as we're already in spoilers, but like crossing into the Grand Line, going only just, I think 3 or 4 islands in their first real foray into the Grand Line, and just realizing that these islands are nothing compared to what they were in the East Blue. We are long past Arlong. We are already like into that moment of like, this shit, part of my French, is really serious. It really is. And I love the pacing for like, like we don't get too much into the spear of things with the larger storyline, which they get to more of that in the middle of the season. But the whole point of it was, again, getting our characters kind of accustomed to what is on the horizon. There's a line in the third episode when they get to the first island where like, you guys couldn't even get past your first island, the Grand Line. And it's like, again, it's just kind of like, it echoes the theme of like, they do feel a little underprepared, like season 1, they were all had their own streams, and when they came together, they were united, and they just assumed that we'll continue that energy into the Grand Line, and now they realize that's not entirely the case. Again, future thinking into the manga, like, again, that this is not going to be the first time they think of this, where it's a little bit underprepared. Maybe they should have stayed out there. They should have stayed in the East Blue a little longer to really train up and to really kind of hone their craft. But they realize also, like, that's not how the journey works. The journey is like, yeah, you're going to get your ass beaten sometimes and not, and sometimes you are going to, succeed. You are going to power through to whatever your current conflict is. And the way, again, like, go back to the systematic structure of the story, like season 2 picks up, like, it is meaning to cross the bridge. We are connecting the bridge between what season 1 was to what season 2 was going to be. Or like, we still have a little bit more left in East Blue before we say goodbye to. In which, we get to see them like kind of going back into where essentially the symbolic nature of the story began, with Goldie Roger's execution, and having Luffy kind of reimburse himself as like, I'm going to be the next king of the pirates. That is my promise to everyone. And honestly, that kind of felt like the culmination of season 1, of like kind of reaffirming that these actors, this performance is going to stand the test of time, and that no matter what happens, this is the mark that they're going to make on us as the viewers. And getting to see Buggy, getting to see I forgot her name. I really do. It's the first pirate captain that Luffy comes across in the show. I forgot her name already, but kind of like, again, getting a reminder of like, like, that was then and this is now, and we are just squared away forward on wherever we get to go next. And then when we move into the Grand Line, and we move into the actual nature of like what a much larger world the East Blue was setting up to be. Like, the East Blue is like just a fraction of what else is out there. And getting to see the new villains, like as the Baroque works, and really getting into like the new lore of this new world. And then again, like, sometimes it's better to slow down a little bit, because I have heard some people probably say that, like, yeah, you could have probably teased Alabasta a little bit more than what we did. But in reality, again, like, One Piece as a story, again, as I was going to compare it to segue to my next segment, was that where it may have a simplistic story, it shines with its characters. Where, again, the returning Straw Hats, all of them go 110% this season. I think personally that they've taken the time off to master their roles, really know the challenges ahead, whether they know the storyline ahead or not. And they are managed to kind of like, as impressing the audiences, like they are the characters fully without an issue. And now we're going to go forward with that. And, I mean, usually I would go from my under the bottom, but like, to talk about the Straw Hats first. Again, every one of them this season, like I loved all of them in season one. I did. I really, really did. And I think my boy Sanji, he gets shafted a lot because like, he joined late in the crew. He was only there for like the latter half of the show. So like, well, the other actors were shooting more months into the production than he did. Like, this was a season where like from start to finish he's there, and it felt a little weird. I feel like Sanji was the slow burn. Obviously, again, you only got to see him with 4 episodes last season, 2 episodes as part of the crew. Now having the whole season as part of the crew, he kind of gives me a little bit of like, you know, like he is the last to get warmed up. He is still like, this is the season where like he is really finding his footing with the team. Where like Luffy, Zoro, and Nami were already a very, in a way, besides Nami's betrayal, spoilers for season one. Besides that, having kind of like a much more tighter bond because they were going through much more, even Usopp a little bit more, before Sanji boarded. So like, yeah, there was a bit of an adjustment period where like, off screen he is a little bit more friendly with them, and he's still, they're all getting to know each other. Like I want to say correctly about the timeline. It's only been a couple of weeks since everything happened. So like, imagine like 2 weeks ago you were on your own, like doing your own thing, and then 2 weeks later you've been recruited by a random guy to be a pirate crew. Like, like life's so crazy. But with Sanji, he definitely took a bit of a much more slower burn with the cast. Like, I think he already had like cinched off his rivalry with Zoro, really getting a good camaraderie with Luffy. And this season was more about kind of elevating that, kind of like making him make sure that he was 100% now officially a Straw Hat, and also setting up some things with him and Nami in a different way. Again, maybe I'm reading things a little bit differently, but like, I know television. I know when you're trying to set up something, writers. I really know. But for him, like, like he didn't really fit the vibe of season one. He was just kind of there. Not to say he didn't have purpose. I still enjoyed his character, but this was when he really felt like he was truly part of the team and truly being involved in things. And Skylar, you are a very dedicated man. I will say that much to it. Usopp being, I never watched the anime, so I don't know how it goes. But like, Jacob Romero really does an amazing job making someone that like, he's the opposite of a hype man. He hypes himself up, and everyone just kind of goes along with it. It's really, really funny, and I really cannot believe like just how much more they double down here. I feel like for him, it's very subtle. It's like, it's like any regular TV season where sometimes you have episodes where you are the shining star, and then sometimes you have your supporting moments. And I think the moments where we get to see what Usopp, again, kind of like, we go back to the theme of like being underprepared, where like his promise was he was going to be the bravest warrior in the sea, and that when we get to the land of the giants and we're realizing this very much more like non-human-y island, like he can survive humans and marines and and sea monsters, but like dinosaurs, giant ass creatures, yeah, no, that's off his wheelbarrow. And the fact that, again, that he went for that growth of it, and like really starting to see like there's other perspectives of being, like you have a dream, and then there's different variations of that dream. You don't know exactly how it's going to turn out till you get there. And for him, with the episode where they go to the dinosaur island, is like, damn, like, that was I know from the anime, just from what I'm told, like that is a very crucial episode in his development. And like, even to now in the current manga and the current anime, we're finally just seeing that, is just like symmetrical, like timing on a whole nother level. But being by the end of it, you still don't lose that Usopp charge, which I think honestly, like, it kind of like only he can perform well in the role. Zoro just gets buff. Zoro got more buff in the season. Like, my partner was telling me like he is like getting to like buff levels that he should be in the time skip. And honestly, again, if they ever get to do the time skip or not, I don't know. But if they're gonna make some liberties, I think personally, This is a good one. This is a really good one. Um, but yeah, with Zoro, again, like I think for everyone, like he suffered the most crushing blow last season, where like he was the closest to his dream, but then it was like the hard reality where like you think you're kind of close to your dream, but you're not. You're still many many steps back, and I give them credit for like giving me Hawks an extra episode, which I don't think he again I could be completely wrong, but from what my partner told me, he was not part of the story in the manga, so the fact they added him here was like it made sense with the inline continuity. And he just keeps reaffirming, he is kind of a stoic man, and he's getting used to the idea of being around people that he considers his friends. Like, he's usually a lone wolf doing whatever he wants, and now he's kind of like abiding by a group of people that, again, like a couple of weeks ago, he wouldn't have imagined. Um, Him going to meet someone that maybe could be a love interest to him in the future, maybe just reminds him of the past, who really knows. Him having his idol slash rival like haunting him is like, these are all like very little motivations, but Zora, and I'm gonna butcher his the actor's name, Makenya, so much. Like he knows how to deliver like the perfect like stoic to comedic value. It reminds me of one of my close friends, and it was a very nice feel for him to do. Nami, by Emily. Again, Nami is her actress is a anime fanatic, and she very much like kind of dream casted this role into existence. She definitely does, I believe, give more percentage than other, because she knows the source material from heart. She knows that this character needs to hit. And honestly, with this season, I don't think we get too much enough. I think Nami had so much focal in season one with the Arlong storyline that having her come into season two, she kind of felt more like a big sister of the group. Not to say she doesn't have her own storyline. When we finally cross into the Grand Line, and it's kind of realized that Nami, again, going back to Zoro and Usopp's case, where like she is underprepared for the Grand Line. She does not know that like crossing into a dangerous sea of lands may not entirely be a one-to-one continuation of what she did before. And I give them credit for like they quickly resolved that, just because we need to keep the story chugging along. But honestly, her just being now learning to be a supportive friend to people that she can actually trust, that doesn't have any malicious intent behind them, I think it just opens up the character a lot more to like new experiences and new interactions with everyone. And honestly, I think that was, I think, still keeping true to the character, it did allow her to kind of like shine a little bit more in a different light, especially when we kind of got to see her a little bit in like a different perspective in the final three episodes. It was just very much like kind of like a different payoff of sorts of like, she went from like trying to take care of herself to letting other people take care of her. And I think honestly, the moment you kind of let that happen, even if you're a very reserved person, is a very major accomplish in your psyche. And Luffy by Inake, I mean, look, he is the definition of a shonen anime hero, and he continues it. And last season, I think he's doubled down on it more often than not, where like he is aware of his power, he is aware of who he is, and he's aware of what he's doing, and he's able to kind of just slide in and out of that role and still like being a goofball at times. Like when we get to the final battle with him and Watro, um, he was very like, he is not taking this seriously, but at the same time he was still able to kind of defeat him with the help of some people at the very end. And as a result, it was just like, oh my god, Inaki was born to play this role. I'm not gonna kid you on that. Like, maybe they probably go a little too far on the comedic nature. Again, I never watched the anime, or I read the manga, so maybe this is just in line with the character. But and if it is, I then I retract my statement. But again, maybe it's just like we're a little bit too much on the whole like carefree nature. But again, he is a carefree pirate, so I shouldn't really comment too much about it. But honestly, again, Inaki does a perfect job here. And just kind of showcasing who he is, and the fact that we're already at season 2, and we already have characters quoting that, yeah, Luffy, you're gonna see who he is really, and any doubts or disbeliefs you have are gonna be washed away when you really get to know him. And it just goes to show that, like, Luffy is their captain for a reason, and his personality shines through, even if he's just laughing or doing some ridiculous thing every episode. It just works as a result of it. Um, all of it was with the other characters, again, like even the secondary characters, even the supplementary character, every one of them has so much personality and so much distinct flavor from their original source material that it makes the content you're watching much more rich as a result. The villains this season being the Baroque works, each agent having its own unique power, its own unique personality. Even like the people that they are easily like kicking their ass 1, 2, 3, they just imbue so much the extra personality that the creator had written for them, and the actors just know the assignment. Like, we're just gonna run with it. We're gonna run with it. And shout out to Cameron Johnson, who was in Batwoman. I remember you, dude. I remember you. And it's like him playing number 5 is like, again, like, God, it was like my partner was so grossed out. Like, he was picking his boogers to get powers, and I'm like, that's so funny. That's so hilarious. But then going to the real stars of the show, which is like Miss Wednesday and Miss All Sunday, where Miss Wednesday happens to be the princess of Alabasta, which again will be the more subject material for season 3. But getting that set up from there, we're like, really connected with the character that really is kind of anchoring this entire like new saga. We finished Ace Blue, now we're moving on to Alabasta. She is a character that really is like the through line for the Straw Hats to kind of get through like their first real hump of the Grand Line. And I'm gonna give shout out to the performance. Like, I was so subverted the by the performance that, again, it could have been the marketing, could have been the footage that was released. The fact that this character went from like, she looked like a villain to the next thing you know, she's besties with all of them, and it makes natural sense. It's just, it feels organically well. It's just like, I didn't even notice. Like, one minute I'm like, she's a villain, she's doing her own thing, she's got her own agenda. Next thing you know, she's like chummy having drinks and having a party with them. I'm like, damn, I was not expecting that to happen whatsoever. And I think, shout out to the actress who really imbued herself into the character and made it seem seamless. Like, again, I didn't notice. It was like, even if I really paid attention to her during the 2-part Land of the Giants episode, I was very much like, I didn't even notice till like we got to Drum Island, and I'm like, oh damn, she's really is part of it. Like, she's really part of this thing, and I really couldn't recognize as a result of it. So yeah, no, she would make a fantastic addition to the group, but I already know, what's going to come with that. Miss All Sunday, which again, I'm aware who she's going to be. I'm aware, and I think it's the opposite of Vivi this season, where like, I know she's a villain. I know she's supposed to eventually join this crew. Sorry, spoilers for the manga, but we're in spoiler filled section, so I do apologize. But um, I think my only thing is like, I don't know how they're gonna pivot her as a hero. As one of them. I really don't know, and I guess that's the one problem I guess I'm gonna have when, like, I have a partner who like knows the story ahead, and like, now that like definitively these 2 seasons of arcs and chapters adapted are forever going to be a green in my head, because like I have a really good memory when it comes to like remembering specific moments from TV shows. Um, Now seeing it on the opposite end with this particular character, it really does embody to the factual point of like, that performance was done so well that you don't even know, like, even if there is a hidden layer in it, it's buried, it is supremely buried deep with it. And shout out to the actress for that. It doesn't even give an inch of like she's a good person, but she definitely is a fair person. And honestly, again, I look very much more forward to what is in store for her character, and obviously to the next big bad for next year. I'm just looking forward to see how that's all gonna like tie in together when we do get to see it. Um, and just shout out to the other characters, like the Marines. We got to see Garp back. I was not expecting them this season, to be honest with you. I thought they were just going to be like, we'll save them until they come back in the manga. But again, similar to Mihawks, like, they just decided to say, screw it. These characters are iconic, and they're here to stay, and they're going to make them work one way or another. And heck, we still have our new Marines that we just introduced, such as Smoker, which, again, the tease at the end of season 1 with the smoke, and now getting to see the character in full vision, was something that I wasn't expecting, to be honest with you. Like, I don't know. I was going into the season like, Smoker's going to be a badass character, and he was. And again, I did not I did not make that call when I watched season one. I didn't. I just assumed like Smoker's a cool name. I hope it's a cool character, and it was very much so. And I was very happy with the result of that. But we gotta save the star of the show, the big old star in the show. To my little boy Chopper, Tony Chopper. His story was so sad, and my partner cried right in front of me during that, and I'm just like, that was really a moment that, you know, I don't know, like they did such a great job, like, you know, making this like, you know, I don't know I know who the next crew members are. I just don't know how their stories play out, but like Tony Chopper being such a visual like challenge to get a VFX character to be part of the main crew. I had a lot of reservations. I thought they were going to take shortcuts. I thought they were really going to find ways to like kind of undercut the tone of it just to save money. But no, they really committed. They really found ways to make it work and have it still be a real and fair adaptation of that original source material. And at the end of it, I fell in love with Chopper. I always thought he was cute. I always thought he was adorable. But, you know, from what I've seen in the anime and photos, but like now seeing him here, really knowing his story, no, I think personally speaking, they did it again. Like, you know, it may not have been a full tune like how it was in season one, where like doing each one of the characters. This may have taken some extra time, but it worked at the end of the day. And, you know, it made Chopper's acceptance into the crew much more, you know, like an anime where like, you know, you never know what character is going to be a character of the week. And then, oh no, actually he's going to be a mainstay. Get used to him, or get used to her. And it's like, that kind of had almost a similar feel where like if you didn't know ahead of time that Chopper was going to join the crew, you just assumed this was just like the marquee character for the season. Then we'll get a new one in season three, and in this case, no, that wasn't the case. Now they're full steam ahead, and you know this little boy that can like, you know, he deserves the world. He really deserves the world, and I just want to give him a big old hug and just tell him like it's all going to be all right. It is all going to be all right. I will say probably my only disappointing gripe with season two is that when it comes to the villain front, I think they tried a little bit too much and too hard with this season's villain. Like again, I know Crocodile is season three's villain, and he's the overarching villain, and we have Baroque works. So I'm like, you know, we never were gonna get the same feeling as Arlong, where like he was a looming threat in the East Blue, and you kind of heard of him, you saw little breadcrumbs, and then when he got to really appear, really make his mark on the story, how does that connect to Luffy? Here with Watchro, I mean, I'm gonna go default back to Luffy's reaction of like his final fight with him. He didn't take him seriously because we had no build up to it. There really was no emotional connection to them, and it doesn't have to be, you know, not all the times you need to have an emotionally connected villain. You just need someone that's going to pose a challenge to our heroes. It was just here like it didn't really work for me. Like, you know, shout out to the performance and everything, I'm not taking anything away from that, but at the end of the day, like, it just didn't have that same impact as Arlong. And I wasn't asking for Arlong 2.0, but I was asking for something that like it does make sense in the story. It just doesn't have that impact where like you felt Luffy like really feeling like he was at the end of his fight with Arlong, where like he like basically side sweeps him all the way down to the ground. We don't get that here. It is a cool, really like a ricochet move. I'm gonna give him credit for that front, but like it didn't have the same impact as I was expecting, and that I would think that would be my only gripe with the season. And I think like I do believe they will rectify this next season when we get to Crocodile. But for the time being, it's just that was something that was corely missing as a result of it. But just to put a pin into it, like season two is amazing. I think it is better than season one in a lot of regards, and for me, I was very thankful that they already saw all this, and like we're going to season three. We're finishing Alabasta properly. And as a result of it, I am totally thrilled with the product we got at the end, to all the actors and all the characters involved here. You know, it just felt like not only season two of a show telling a new story, but it just also felt like a natural continuation. So if you are binging this now, going from season one's finale to season two premiere, it does feel seamless. They manage to like perfectly pick up the same feeling, because you know when time passes, when like you know you have a little bit of a break, there's going to be some nuanced changes. There is going to be it's been witnessable many times before, but here getting to see these characters just pick back up where they left off and just getting better and better. It is a rare commodity when it comes to television shows nowadays, and I'm very happy to have witnessed that. And I'm equally more excited to see how they're going to increase the bar in season 3. But with all that being said, I'm giving this season of One Piece my highest recommendation, 2 thumbs up. It is well worth the binge. It is a perfect. You start in the morning, you finish in the evening. That is the perfect show of this caliber. It really, really is, and I hope that season 3 is as equally as great as that. But with that being said, let me know down below. What did you think of One Piece Season 2? Did you love it? Did you like it? Let me know down below. I would love to have a conversation with you about it. But I believe that's going to do it for me today, everyone. So if you're unaware, this has been What's the Two from ActionX, having reviewed the second season of One Piece definitively. If you want to know what we're doing normally, What's the Two besides our special seasonal reviews, right now we are doing rookie episode reviews and Matlock episode reviews each and every week after their brand new was broadcast on ABC and CBS respectively. I will be back to review season 3 in the future, whenever that is. Hopefully it's not too long, but I very much look forward to getting back into this universe, getting back into this corner, and seeing exactly what more we can go from there. So I'm really looking forward to that. But until then, again, thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't yet, like, favorite, share if you want to, ring that bell, and follow social media for more. But until we see each other again, thank you so much for watching. Please stay safe out there, be good to each other, and as always, peace out.